Spurs fans, to your night, oh nights. Spurs, winners. Son Heung-min, winner. Tottenham Hotspur, trophy lifters. Ange Postecoglou, tonight we're all Postecoglouites. Sisyphus has just rolled the rock to the top of the hill, taken a deep breath, opened the can and said, I told you I always win something in my second season, mate. We survived. El Tragico, El Crapico, El Hello Darkness, my old friendo. A zombie final. So bad. It could have been a posthumous Elliott Smith song. Two depressed, shattered, lonely teams clashed in Bilbao, and Tottenham Hotspur beat Manchester United 1-0. A trophy. Ultimately, they feared humiliation the most. Ange Postecoglou proved he was speaking truth in the face of mockery. And he has. Here's the good news. He has taken his team to prove they have only had the second most traumatised, pain-filled, sad sack of a campaign this season. I'm not quite sure what we've just watched. 16th against 17th, directly above the relegation places, playing terrible football. But God bless, it was like watching Eeyore and Ralph Wiggum just have a knife fight to the death, and I loved it. Two losers enter, one team leaves, and it was Spurs. First time since 2008, lifting a trophy, ending with a cool $130 million and a Champions League Willy Wonka golden ticket in their pocket. Whatever happened to good old-fashioned theological reward and punishment, I do not know. But I tell you who does and understands what we've just seen. Trauma bonding time, a.k.a. the greatest night in modern Spurs history. It's a joy to revel in all the schadenfreude with my friend, the scourge of restaurants and gelateria all over Europe. From The Observer, Crown Prince of Harrogate, it's Mr. Rory Smith.
Lads, it's Tottenham.
Lads, it's Tottenham. That sounds shiny and aspirational, doesn't it, Ro?
It's all of a sudden it does. They've won a trophy. They won a big boy trophy. It's incredible.
Let me ask you the hard-hitting question first. Spurs are European champions. They might be 17th place in the league, but can I get a ruling? Even though Arsenal came in second, does St. Totteringham's Day now get cancelled?
I think, I mean, not officially. Like, it's an official holiday in Britain, obviously, St. Totteringham's Day. So we can't rearrange the calendar. But I think spiritually that there is no St. Totteringham's Day this year. I mean, Spurs have had genuinely like an appalling season in the Premier League, and I don't think they'll care in the slightest.
It's amazing. Another question. 2025, year of shock silverware, trademark. Newcastle winners, Crystal beautiful Palace winners. Spurs somehow even more shocking, somehow even more surprising than the first two, Rule.
Yeah, because you felt that in even in this like weird situation where you had the teams who were 16th and 17th best in the Premier League, you felt that United's general trophiness, their experience in those situations, there's something institutional in the club. I remember talking to someone at AC Milan once, who said even years after their like golden age, he felt they still had that kind of sense of what to do on the big occasion. There's something in the water. And he sort of thought that would pay for United, but Spurs had a game plan. It absolutely was not the game plan that Ange Postecoglou has been banging on about for the last 2 years. It was totally different to that. It was
mate.
It was a Jose Mourinho performance, and it was a brilliant Jose Mourinho performance. Maybe they should have been doing that more of the time.
Can I just tell you? I mean, you think about these three different fairy tales. They are fairy. We just watched Crystal Palace, the ultimate fairy tale. South London, happy, joyful. The fans, the tifos. Newcastle, a fairy tale. It's austerity. Northern town just cut adrift by the government. Just an innocent little nation state came in and lifted them up to silverware. There were elements of that were beautiful. This fairy tale is almost like the plane crashed, everyone died, but still romance somehow blossomed. I have not seen a narrative or lived a narrative like it. I'm so happy for all the Spurs fans in the chat, in the world. I mean, we saw already images coming in from South Korea, from Japan, just utter delirium. I want to get to the game, but I need to ask you one more question. Ange Postecoglou. I always win something in my second season, mate. Raw, I teared up at the final whistle, watching him turn around and roar at the Spurs fans, lifting both arms in glory in that moment. He spoke truth. Tonight we are all, as I said up top, all Postecoglouites, members of that religion. He spoke truth to power, tabloid media power. They called him a clown. They humiliated him. He overcame. I loved watching Ange at full time. I thought of the Nietzsche quote that it was suffering and incapacity that created all afterworlds, this and the brief madness of bliss, which is experienced only by those who suffer deeply. This man has suffered deeply, Ro. We will talk deeper about what it means for Ange Postecoglou in one moment, but it was gorgeous to watch a human, that redemption narrative, Ro.
Do you know, the bit that really got me was after the goal, and it was, as we'll talk about, the most fitting goal for this final because it was it was a terrible goal. Brennan Johnson didn't even make any contact with the cross. He missed it completely. It was just a Luke Shaw own goal that the goalkeeper should somehow still have saved. But anyway, in the slow-mo replay afterwards, you saw Postecoglou do the little fist pump, and then he smiled. Yeah. And I realised I've not seen Ange Postecoglou smile possibly ever, but certainly for like a year. And it took me back to that time when he was this kind of breath of fresh air in English football. And we liked the fact that he seemed to be kind of emotionally intelligent and somehow kind of progressive in his man management. And he stood for all the things that were good. And he had this bold vision of football that we knew was flawed, but it was fun and he believed in it. And he seemed like he kind of got it. He seemed earthy and grounded. Yes. And that's been lost in the last... He's been chewed up and spat out by the power of the Barclays. And there was just in that moment when Johnson scored and he smiled, you just thought, oh yeah, actually, Ange Postecoglou was a decent bloke. I remember that now. We like him. We like that guy. He's not the kind of grumpy, staring at the floor shoegazer that we've seen for the last year. He's the nice bloke.
He's a winner. He's a bloody winner. And I've always loved him. I've loved being with him. I've loved interviewing him. I've loved listening to him. You're right. When you were talking about those early days, that first 10 games, it was like hearing Tracy Chapman. That when you described it, like I remember when we were driving in your car, speed so fast, felt like I was drunk. There were days when those city lights sparkled before him. But I mean, tonight, our arm did feel nice wrapped round his shoulder. It felt like watching an Australian Babe Ruth. This is what the Ange Postecoglou story, and whether it goes much further, we do not know, and we'll talk about that. If I were Ange, I'd resign tonight. Be like, yep, see ya. But it was like watching an Australian Babe Ruth point to the bleachers, then pound himself in his testicles with his baseball bat, and then still hit a home run. That's what I believe we've seen. And God, I've not seen anything like it in sport. It is humanly. It is remarkable to look the tabloid media, that ferocious force that has taken down far greater men than Ange, and to laugh last is humanly. Talk about tenacity. It is almost limitless. How
many times in the last 5 months do you think Ange just sat in his room at home, probably staring at the floor, and thought, "I really wish I hadn't said that."
Yeah, just like looking, stupid Ange. Stupid.
Why did you say that?
Oh, Ange, stupid. Your mouth, oh, stupid. Yeah, Ange, not stupid. Bloody brilliant. What a. We're living in a world of chaos tonight. Unless you're a United fan, and I want to say hello to all United fans, tonight feels like fleetingly the force of good may win. It won't, kids. But God, it felt like it for a moment. But anyway, let's break the game down, Raw, with all of you watching at home. This game was so bad, it was like being forced to watch an amateur dramatic production in an assisted living facility. But here we are. We're going to break it down. Massive. For you Spurs fans, United fans, tell us how you're feeling, because you can come on stage. This is a Do It Live. Dear GFOPs, you're a massive part of the show. You can come, ask us questions about the final, about Spurs now, what now for Amorim at United, or you can ask about life. Here's how. Scan the QR code in the top left of your screen, take you into a Zoom with producer Tony. Oh, gorgeous Tony. It will get you set to ask your question. Come and be with us. It's audio only, so do not be afraid. League. Come, get your questions in now. Hit the chat. We'll be reading them throughout the show. There goes my first beer of the night. And just click the little thumbs up at the bottom of the screen if you haven't done. It will help. And subscribe to our YouTube. Kevin De Bruyne is going to come on here on Saturday. Lucas in the chat asks, what even is there to break down? My God, I've got to tell you, even have you not seen how deeply proctologists ruminate on their work? This is essentially what Rory and I are about to do. Chat's humming. Torgmeister says, I did an experiment on Freudenfreude. Oh, God bless. B'nai Brown will be very happy. For Spurs versus Schadenfreude against Man U, I've got to admit, Schadenfreude won out. Oh, my God. It makes me so happy to see Manchester United lose. Torgmeister, try harder. KM Bum says, you can't say anymore. It could be worse. You could be supporting Everton because supporting Manchester United is officially worse than supporting Everton. It's not KM Bum. They won things before Americans en masse started to care. You might not believe me. United were very good at football. Gage Wheeler says, Postacogloid self-flagellating in penance for doubting the Angiosire. God, it's deep. Raw, let's go back before kick-off. We held a poll. Who needs this more? We did it on YouTube and your Amorim. I think 72% of you said Big Ange and Tottenham. Thanks for your participation, you beautiful GFOPs. I'm going to be candid with you. I don't know if you can paratroop yourself back into a time before Tottenham were winners, Raw. But before kickoff, what was your mindset? Ruben Amorim was coming out with the most Johnny Cash Herter managerial sound bites. A final only has meaning if you win. This great line, losing leaves nothing but sadness. That should be said in a deeper, bolder voice than mine. But Spurs, yeah, they've beaten United 3 times already this season. But the history of the Spurs DNA, the losing, the lack of silverware, absence of James Maddison and Lucas Bergvall, 21 defeats in the Premier League. Could you even imagine? Because I couldn't. I'll be honest. Before kickoff, I wanted it very badly. A lot of my friends are Spurs fans. A lot of my friends went to the game. A lot of Americans, a lot of you listeners have flown over to Bilbao. I don't know. I couldn't make the case. I couldn't even flat out imagine, Raw, what Tottenham glory would look like in your adult lifetime.
Well, no, because neither of us, and this will sound like a jibe, but it's not meant to. But you can't imagine it because I don't really remember it. I mean, I know I was around when they won the League Cup in 2008, and I was around when they won the League Cup in 1999. And to be honest, Roger, despite my youthful face, I remember them winning the FA Cup in 1991 as well. I
remember 1961, the double, but back to you.
You are possessed by some sort of spirit. Roger's eternal. That's what we don't realise. He was broadcasting from like those mad mob ball games from the 17th century. I assumed, partly because United do have that ability that deep down, buried somewhere in their sort of rotten souls, this team do have that institutional knowledge of Manchester United will always find a way at the end. That is kind of part of that club's identity. It's built into their DNA that they score 2 goals in injury time to beat Bayern Munich and win the Champions League. They score in 30 time. They are a club that gets over the line. That's what Manchester United are. And the other more practical reason was that Spurs didn't have Dejan Kulusevski. And that felt like, of all the injury problems that both teams had, that felt to me bigger than Maddison, bigger than Bergvall, bigger than any of the players that United were missing. It felt like no Kulusevski. Spurs probably don't have their main creative force. They don't have the proper cutting edge. And I think the other factor was that there was almost less pressure on Spurs than there was on Manchester United. That United, I think, did need it more. And we've alluded to this a little bit in the last week or two as we've talked about it more. But there's this idea that this game kind of defined Postecoglou's future. I'm not sure that's actually true, you know. I think Postecoglou probably goes either way. And if even now they've won, I think he gets to make that call. Like that situation is kind of separate from this game. I think Amorim needed this win to get that money for the Champions League, to get that boost to his reign. This is kind of the watershed for him. He has had a disastrous first 8-9 months at Manchester United. He needed that little golden tick at the end. And now that he doesn't have it, he's got a real problem.
I think if Amorim, this is a convo for another time. If Amorim, I was speaking to Ian Graham, the data analyst, and we were talking about players who look like midfielders. I was like, if Guendouzi didn't have that cool hair, no one would ever let him be a professional footballer. In the same way, it's like if Ruben Amorim hadn't had that week of smiling and looking cool before he managed the game, if he looked, 10 years older, sourer, more confused, we'll get to both of these guys, though, because this game was pretty much... This game was like the end of Reservoir Dogs, where the police are closing in. Mr. Orange, mortally wounded, confesses to Mr. White that he's an undercover cop. Mr. White shoots Mr. Orange and then himself is killed by the police. This is what this game reminded me of as I was watching it. It felt like two doomed men trying to do the right thing under pretty grotesque mental conditions. And so it began. High risk, surreal reward. Tottenham, your Bodo glimpse slayers, buzzing. Dropping crosses onto that loose sphincter of a goalkeeper, Onana. United, for their part, when they threatened mostly down the flanks, trying to tempt Vicario to flap. You don't really have to tempt Vicario to flap. It's kind of what he does. Diallo flashed agonisingly wide as a result. I mean, this was like a dodgy keeper dance-off for much of the first half, Rule.
Yeah, both defences looked really, really shaky. You could tell that there wasn't that same kind of death or glory, like all-out attack thing that Spurs kind of have built their whole reputation on, for good and for bad. It looked nervous, it looked anxious, and it looked like two teams who weren't kind of good enough to cope with those nerves. If you have a really kind of redoubtable defence, like a really kind of obdurate, proper Italian defence, you can look nervous and still kind of get through it. Whereas this was lots of players giving the ball away all of the time and everyone kind of bunching because they felt there might be safety in numbers. They looked like they were kind of trying to wander through a dangerous area after dark. Like, let's not be too far away from each other. We need to be really close.
What? Guy, I want to apologise to Brendan O'Loughlin in the chat who says, damn, spoiler alerts for Reservoir Dogs now. It's true. I'll give you my VHS videotape of it, Brendan. Just send in your postal and I will dispatch it. It's yours. There was a moment that kind of changed the game. Richie, Ahmad had been in a world of bleeding confidence. I sound like a movie trailer voice. In a world of bleeding confidence. Ahmad was like the one footballer who thought he could hurt his opponent. Richarlison actually clattered him. And everything that happened for Spurs occurred in the wake. They worked the ball down the left. Pap Sarr floated a quite stunning cross. I don't know what happened here. I mean, you think he didn't touch it. To me, Brennan Johnson came to meet it near post, tries to flick the ball. And just fittingly for a game of this quality, actually the ball went backwards away from goal. This is what was astonishing. But it did succeed in rolling quite cruelly and quite slowly up the tum-tum of Luke Shaw. And then continued to bobble in exquisite slow motion over the line. Onana's impotent diving swipe was just chef's kiss, as was Johnson's aborted knee slide. Spurs 1-0 up without a single shot on target. As you've said, Raw, it's really the quality of the game cried out for a goal just like that.
Yeah, you couldn't have had a beautiful 25-yard strike or an intricate team move. That would have been total. I mean, I don't think there's any world in which that could have happened. I don't think anyone on the pitch knew how to do it, despite the fact that they are all really highly paid and extremely good professional footballers. It was the perfect goal. I think more than whether it was Brennan Johnson or Luke Shaw who touched it. I think what happened was that the universe, like whatever supreme being you believe in, thought this is going to have to end at some point. And we probably want those ones to win, and just kind of put a spin on the ball to make it happen. Because you had that momentary pause, didn't you, in the stadium, where they were like, there wasn't ball hits net, fans go up. It was ball hits net, fans looked at each other thinking, no, that's not right. That's not what goals look like. Oh, it is a goal. We'll celebrate. It was suitably dreadful.
Pretty sure in the replay, Brennan Johnson screams backboard, and he meant it. Whatever, Spurs were 1-0 up at half-time off an XG of 0.21. United's also 0.21. And the strange reality of this first 45 minutes was United are bad, but they have to be better than this. Bruno Fernandes, Mason Mount were nowhere. Rasmus Højlund, he's essentially just there to do the hand modelling at this point for the watches. The players, they should be so much better than this. Honestly, the truth holds for both teams. The wheels within wheels absurdity of this was that, yes, they're 16th and 17th in the league table, but they are 4th and 9th in the Deloitte money list. I mean, it should not be humanly possible for either team to be this bad. In a world where you know this, when like 90% of football is about the correlation between the wage bill and the winning, were we just watching two garbage cans of cash set on fire? And I'm okay with that.
You kind of have to. Well, you take your entertainment where you can get it in 2025, Rog. I think you have to kind of remember that the nerves of the final, the scale of the occasion, all that stuff, that does impact it. But I've got to admit, I found myself watching it increasingly for particularly the first hour, first 70 minutes, really, before that kind of sense of, okay, right, anything goes, up comes the goalkeeper for a corner. Before that, I was thinking like, obviously most people who are on this call watch the Premier League week in, week out. Lots and lots of people watch the Premier League. But there are people who will watch the Europa League final in like Germany or Italy or France or wherever, who might not be regular Premier League viewers. Their attentions might be, I watch Borussia Mönchengladbach every week and I kind of see the goals from England. That might be the way they interact with the Premier League. Maybe get some stuff on my socials. You're not watching a 90-minute game necessarily of the Premier League unless you have a horse in the race. And they really must have thought, hang on,
my God.
You have taken all that money. You have taken all of our players. You have ruined our leagues. You have decimated our talent pools. You've ruined like the whole like television ecosystem of European football, torn up the power balance, and you've made this. It must have been genuinely like, hang on, like Athletic Bilbao fans and Lyon fans and these Eintracht Frankfurt fans, the teams that these teams have beaten to get there, just sitting there, hanging their heads, thinking, what on earth happened to us? Eintracht Frankfurt are third in the Bundesliga. They should have hammered Tottenham. Tottenham are awful. And there really is that the difference between how much money these teams have and what they've produced. A lot of people involved in tonight's production should be very embarrassed.
Raw, I'm listening to you. And yes, talking about the other leagues. This time last year, we were talking about the beautiful, beautiful final between Atalanta and Bayer Leverkusen. Two cohesive, tactically ferocious overachievers. We talked about how after that final, Dad Jeans aficionado Atalanta manager Gianpiero Gasperini described it as a triumph for meritocracy. God knows what he would have called this. What would he have called this? I mean, it was like watching bloated Nepo babies fighting to the death. This was like the same kind of advertisement for the Premier League that forcing someone to listen to Limp Bizkit's first album and say, well, what do you think of pop music? Or like, this is the room of football games. This is like having to watch Jaden Smith in an act-off with Taylor Lautner. This was absurdly bad. And it got worse. Second half flat, nerve-filled, like watching two drunk tightrope walkers. Why would you watch that? Sonny came on 67th minute, replaced Everton's Richarlison. I was a little surprised Amorim waited so long to make his changes. Flung on Garnacho and Xerxes. Garnacho trying to hungrily lash low. The moment of the game, Mickey van der Ven's clearance off the line, was it from Højlund's prod after Vicario tried to, clear the ball with his face? Was van der Ven the best goalkeeper on the field on this day?
That save was incredible. That was actually the only real moment of quality in the entire game. The kind of the anticipation that van der Ven showed, the ridiculous athleticism. Mickey van der Ven's like 7'2". It's the same as like Wemby doing that. Like, it doesn't make any sense that he can do that. I was watching it with my son, who found the way he fell very funny. Just kept shouting, "He's fallen on his bum, Dad!" That was a high quality piece of defending, genuine quality piece of play. Amazing that it was preceded immediately by Guglielmo Vicario throwing the ball into his own face. That also was
Watch me now. I mean, by the way, just doing it for your son. They're all just playing football for your son. Just like genuinely farting out ping pong balls, slapping the ball into their own face, landing on their bums. Watching Spurs defend is an agony. It's a bit like me being commanded to, like grow hair or something. There are so many erratic, prone to synapse human beings in that back line. United, we know they've been tenacious in Europe. Ask a Lyon fan. Here they did the genius tactical trick that led to that Lyon win, that Amorim was brought in because Amorim is a deft genius in a bottle tactician, which is flinging Harry Maguire up front as an emergency striker role. That was kind of it, right?
Do you know, I've been reading Harry Potter to my son, Rog, over the last 18 months. And the thing that I keep thinking when I'm reading Harry Potter, we're kind of on book, there's no spoilers here. We're on like book 5 now, 600 pages in.
It's big of it. You're a good dad, better dad than me.
A lot of murder in Harry Potter for a children's book. A lot of murder. And I was thinking that, partly because I was watching it with him, there's a lot of playing your centre half up front for Ruben Amorim, given he's meant to be a tactical genius. You know, you've got this guy who's come in and as kind of, he's got this amazing system that he will not change. I will not change my system. I'm not changing my system. And yet, like every time I watch Manchester United, it seems to end with Harry Maguire up front. That, more than anything, is the bit where someone at United should be saying, hang on, this guy's playing the centre half up front a lot for a genius. That's maybe not a great sign.
I mean, it is. It's like if Tottenham Hotspur are Sisyphus. I mean, Amorim's Manchester United, it could very well be the old fable of the Emperor has no clothes. 7 minutes of extra time and agony for Spurs fans. I mean, it felt eternal. Eternal for a fan base who've had to wait 17 years and, 86 days without a trophy. God bless United. They managed like Euro blasting chaotically over a sure header poked away by Vicario. And that was that. I'm so happy for the Spurs fans in my life. Their passion, which we talk while we're talking, is on full display. Just after the trophy presentation, they poured out the stands onto the field. Less a pitch invasion, more a mass catharsis. It's stunning to watch. I've called them the Everton of the South. When I watched those last 10 minutes, I kept hearing Cellini's voice in my head saying, it's the history of the Spurs. I kept hearing Sir Alex Ferguson saying, lads, it's Tottenham. I kept hearing Antonio Conte, Tottenham's own manager, say, for 20 years, there is the owner, but they never won something. They all had echoey accents as I heard them rebound around my head. Raw, for Tottenham to win, it's like seeing an elephant fly. Are we meant to believe that Spursiness means something different now? Is it no longer beta? Does Spursiness now connote alphas, winners?
I don't want to be mean. Maybe for tonight and tomorrow, but then after that, it's just Spursiness again, isn't it? There is that idea, that kind of meme, which predates memes as we know them, that is too deep rooted to be changed by. Spurs are a massive club. Spurs have won loads of trophies. They haven't won trophies since 2008, but I get really annoyed when you hear about fans saying, "Oh, we're suffering." Supporting Tottenham is not suffering. Supporting Macclesfield is suffering. Supporting, I don't know, CSKA Sofia is suffering. Being a Tottenham fan, it's kind of winning the lottery. Maybe not winning the jackpot on the lottery, but like a decent prize. They have won trophies before. They will win trophies again. I think it's really important for the club that they won this big one, after a gap of 17 years. That really matters. It's something that they should take huge amounts of pleasure and huge amounts of pride in. But yeah, next season, as soon as they throw away a lead, Arsenal fans will call them Spursy. That is not going to change.
I've been to a game at CSKA Moscow, and I watched a fan near me just take a crap on the terrace brazenly. That was suffering. Gage Wheeler in the chat says, Timo Werner given a Terry's chocolate orange as a participation trophy. Bite your bloody arm off. By the way, CSKA Sofia top of the Bulgarian league right now, I'll have you know. Yes, no crapping on the terraces at Sofia, my friend. But back to Tottenham, $130 million richer now than they were 3 hours ago. Alongside that trophy, you think about the calibre of the player who'll want to arrive now for Champions League football for Tottenham. Eberechi Eze, for instance. What does this win mean, Raw? Is it more than a Band-Aid on a gaping wound, long-term septic? It is, isn't it?
Yeah, it's much more than that. It's a huge thing for Tottenham's status as a club, especially this summer, that whether Postecoglou's the manager or not, and I'll be honest with you, Rog, I've no idea which way that one goes. It means that they can invest more, so they have got access to that Champions League money. It means that they can attract a higher quality of player or find it easier to attract their first choice players. They are playing with the big boys again, and that's really important for Tottenham. A lot of the growth that Tottenham have had in the last 20 years, which has been astonishing in terms of the infrastructure of the club. What Daniel Levy has done has been really impressive. A lot of it kind of rests on being in the Champions League. They see themselves as a Champions League club. The fact that there's another 5 Premier League teams going into the Champions League, that's significant too, because it means that Spurs don't lose ground on them. So just being there is important. the opposite obviously is true for Manchester United. But in terms of status, in terms of self-confidence, I think it's vital.
God bless. I've got a horrible feeling that for Tottenham Hotspur, this is all going to end a bit like for Brooks Hatland and the Shawshank Redemption, that after serving 50 years in prison, we just saw Brooks freed. But he won't be able to adjust to a life outside of prison. And we know how it ended. No spoilers there, baby. But let's talk about Ange Postecoglou for a second. Then we'll touch upon Manchester United quickly before we take your questions, because there's a lot of them. Ange, to me, is a living reminder. There's a Clive Barker quote. Any fool can be happy. It takes a man with real heart to make beauty out of the stuff that makes us weep. And that's what I believe Ange has done. In its purest sense, to be candid, he has created beauty out of the stuff that has made generations of Spurs fans weep. When he took over the club, they were struggling. Morale was low. Antonio Conte had just burned the place down. Harry Kane was about to be sold. The club were floundering. Jose Mourinho had kick them in the down belows. Nuno Espirito Santo would flatline there because it's, Spurs, and Conte club demanded entertainment. He gave it to them, but that entertainment turned into chaos, and then it teetered upon madness. Worst Premier League season in forever. Poor Ange has been battered, has looked shattered, screamed at by away fans, mocked in his face by reporters, belittled. They call I'm not a clown. For a manager to have to say, I'm not a clown, to have to say that on the eve of his final, I am not a clown. Left to flail, he said, left to flail by the Spurs hierarchy. That's what he's annoyed by. That he was always the sole voice of the club. Daniel Levy never spoke, never gave him cover, never gave any other voice. It was all about Ange. He could be the only wrong thing when there was lots of things that were not right. I mean, given raw players, 100 million spent on teens, not fit for purpose in his moment. Hated being the sole spokesman. Raw tonight, above all, the beauty of it was Ange's vindication.
Yeah, completely. And I think there have been times this season in particular, maybe the last 6 months particularly, where he's not helped himself. There's been a lot of kind of spikiness and churlishness, and a lot of the staring at the floor. The staring at the floor, Rog, really annoys me. It really gets on my goat. I'm
pretty sure it's psychological, to be candid, but I'm projecting there. But keep going, beautiful.
I feel like it's just not a great look. It probably is, and I suspect it's to do with trying to control himself and trying to kind of in some way under that like intense spotlight. Maybe the metaphor there's too on the nose, but like he's kind of shielding his eyes from the scrutiny. Maybe, I don't know. I understand it. I just don't like it. But I felt sorry for him as in that role as the only spokesman for the club. It feels deeply unfair whenever a manager's in that position. He has been treated, I think, quite unfairly. His "I'm not a clown" T-shirt is prompting a lot of questions already answered by his T-shirt. It feels like a man who came in as a breath of fresh air, who was someone who was so welcome in the Premier League, who seemed to be a really sort of good addition as a character to the Premier League soap opera. It feels fitting that he gets his moment, and it feels fitting that if he is to go, if that is, the last or second to last game we see him as Spurs manager, that he gets to go out with his head held high. I think Ange Postecoglou, whether you think he's good enough to be Spurs manager or not, I think he deserves that.
God bless. Sean Gilmore in the chat says Ange should retire immediately and become the greatest Australian existential philosopher. He is already, in a way, Sean Gilmore. Mohamed Salah on Twitter. Yes, Mo Salah's official Twitter account has just tweeted, he did say he'd win in his second season. Congratulations. I admire Ange so much. The guy, his journey, it's been brutal. This was the guy who had to fight for respect everywhere we went. By the way, his journey began coaching Panachaiki in the Greek third division, Whittlesea Zebras back in Melbourne, while running coaching clinics on the side for kids. I think he deserves to keep the job. By the way, if I were him, I'd quit tonight and just be like, sod it. I'd be out there in a heartbeat with you. He will never be more legend than he is in the moment. We've talked about how winning something is not the ultimate test of success. I think he said it himself last season. It's the way you play, were his words. And I think we may be in an ultimate two things can be true moment of the Spurs season where they are finally winners. But like, it's almost like he's the custodian of a property. And yes, he's thrown one hell of a weekend banger of a party. But whoops, he's also destroyed the house he was meant to be looking after in the process. He's speaking right now, Roy. He says, I love what I do. I'm so blessed to be able to do what I love every day. I've got beautiful people around me. This is the victory lap, Roy. My family, today's been the hardest. I had to pinch myself today, to be honest. I got mates that come from Australia, and a part of me was thinking I should be in the stands with them, just enjoying the spectacle. It's difficult for me to comprehend, but we're here now. We've won it. Ange had an out-of-body experience by the sound of things, Rob.
Or he just sort of thought that it was quite stressful managing the team in a major final, and he'd rather be in the stands with his mates. That seems completely reasonable to me. That is hard to begrudge him. That success. There have been things he's done this season that have not been great. I don't really think they should be 17th in the Premier League, if I'm completely honest. I think we had a comment a little bit earlier saying that they were without their three, prime creative midfielders, Maddison, Kulusevski and Birdval. That is true. That does, to some extent, mitigate the performance. But they also have a squad full of incredibly expensive international footballers. Like, they can be better than that. And they can certainly be better than they've been in the Premier League. But it's really hard to begrudge him that moment, that sense of, not just for what he's done at Spurs, his entire journey. And that was the point he made when he kind of criticised the media yesterday for the piece that called him a clown. That if you look at how hard he's worked to get to where he is, the amount of work it takes to be a manager who's just not good enough for Tottenham is astonishing, especially for an Australian, especially for someone from a non-traditional football country. And I think there's a reason that quite a lot of American fans see themselves a little bit in Postecoglou, see themselves a little bit in Spurs. I think that is a thing. Part of the reason it must be that he's an Australian who had to overcome not only the geographical distance, because Australia is a long, long way away. He didn't just have to overcome the cultural shame of cheating at cricket. He also had to overcome the fact that Europeans kind of look at Australians with a little bit of snobbery and they think, well, what do you know about football? He's overcome all that to get to this point.
Yes.
That story is inspiring.
I know. I've got to say, a little part of me is like, I'm not a religious man, but tonight I'm like, Bob Bradley, he is risen. He had to die so that Ange Postecoglou could fly, and it feels amazing. I want to talk about United. I also, there's the question of what does it mean? Is the Europa League actually easier than the Premier League, which is a fascinating question. Are we going to see a lot of this now? Is this the place, is the Europa League essentially going to become the garbage can, the anus of the Premier League? Or is this just a one-off? But I do want to get to your questions. You've been so bloody patient. Remind you of how this works on YouTube Live. Scan the QR code on your top left. Click the pinned comment in chat. Take you into a Zoom with our producer, Tony, who will tell you what you need to know. I'm going to call you up, unmute. Come on up. Come and be with us. Tell us where you're from and what your question for the mighty Rory is. Let's start with Sully. Sully, come unmute. Tell us where you are, you beautiful human being, and what your question is.
Hi, Raj. Hi, Rory. How you doing? Just want to say before I go on my question, thanks for keeping us company after every Premier League week this season. It's been great to listen to. So I have two questions. Just two quick ones I wanted to ask you. I just wanted to see if I could find them. I wrote them down somewhere. Aha, here they are. I just wanted to ask you, do you think we'll ever see another season like this? Like Crystal Palace, a team that hasn't won a trophy in over 100 years. They won the FA Cup this season. Newcastle, a team that hasn't won in 70, 80 years, winning the League Cup. And now Spurs, who, it hasn't been that long for them, but they just won something for the first time in a long time. And my second one is, are Man United, are they officially done? What are they could get relegated next season, couldn't they? I mean, they are terrible.
Good and terrible. Are you a United fan, Sully?
Oh, no. I'm a Liverpool fan. I wouldn't be cut dead wearing anything. Manchester related.
God bless. I could tell by the glee in your voice for that question. I mean, the second question we should definitely get to, Ro, so we can touch upon Manchester United. The first one, I have to say, I hope so. I mean, ultimately, this is the most steroidy Premier League, where we talked about it in last Monday's podcast. You know, ultimately, the rise of the mid-table is often just the economics of the Premier League right now is giving so many teams so much muscle. So I just say, why not Everton? I take from this season. Why not us? Why not us? But Raw, Manchester United, Ruben Amorim's Manchester United. You know, an agony. You started to talk about what Ange gained by winning, but my God, the defeat for this Ange Postecoglou for this Ruben Amorim moment is savage.
Yeah, it's been difficult to kind of make the case the last couple of weeks because it sounds like you've been willfully contrary. But I think that it was a more significant game for Amorim than it was for Postecoglou. I think Postecoglou's future, like I say, is kind of almost determined away from the actual outcome of the game. But Amorim needed this because they need the money, they need the status. I had to, as I say, I was watching it with my son, who's 7, also a Liverpool fan. I'm a neutral, famously. And he said after about 10 minutes, he went, "Dad, who do we want to win?" And I said, "Well, what you need to remember is that I'm a neutral, Ed. So, just bear that in mind. But if I wasn't a neutral, what I'd be saying was, we don't want Spurs to win so much as we want Manchester United to lose." And he said, "Why?" And the answer is that Manchester United made my life miserable for 20 years because they just won everything all of the time, and it was awful to watch.
All of the time.
It brings me an intense pleasure as a fan, not as a journalist. As a fan, it brings me intense pleasure that he will never know that. He will never know the pain of watching Manchester United win everything all of the time. My sense has always been they are too big not to come back. That the amount of money they have available, and I can talk for hours about this, so I'm really sorry. But even when people complain about the Glazers, who have been objectively terrible owners, they've still spent what was it, $2.7 billion on footballers in the last 20 years. That's a lot. This problem has never been how much money they spend. United make so much money, they have access to such money that they will come back at some point. But the journey gets longer and longer and longer. And the longer they're away from the Champions League, the longer they're away from winning the really major trophies, the Champions League, the Premier League, the harder it'll be to keep up, because Manchester City will keep going, Arsenal will keep going, Chelsea will keep going, Liverpool will keep going. Their road back looks much longer than I could have ever really have conceived that it would be. And I'm not sure that Ruben Amorim gets to be the person in charge of that anymore.
God, I love when I hear you speak, Ro. I'm hearing the Talking Heads Road to Nowhere play in my mind, and I love it. I mean, it does hurt, Sully, to be candid, that United didn't just lose the game, they lost the money, the 130 million. The Champions League football, the quality of the players they could have signed for that rebuild is now just consequently very different. MMLK in the chat says government cheese sandwiches only at United next year. I mean, the chaos that's going on, the way the new ownership are being now, they've just flung themselves to become the scapegoats for this financial austerity moment. But let's talk about Amorim's United, because there is a sense in the media in England, because so many of them are former United winners, that United will of course United will return to the mean. But the longer it takes them to do it, the less likely they are to do that. And there's no given, because not only have United changed, football has changed, well, United have changed. And God bless, United have already briefed the press that they'll keep Ruben Amorim as head coach next season, irrespective of the result tonight. This has been a record stinker of a Premier League campaign. United are 16th in the Premier League. They have lost, is it 17 games? This is generationally bad. 1973-74, I think, since they've had a performance like this. Amorim replaced Eric Ten Hag. There has been always no evidence of uptick in fortune, no pulse. Europa League was like the hope, their chalice, the shelter from the storm almost. But how many players has he made better? When you look at this season, how many? How is, what kind of green shoots of hope do you point to tactically? Other than just pointing repeatedly with radical truth at the flaws that are so deeply ingrained in the culture as losing has become normalised. It's almost like it's like a Portuguese Tim Robinson wearing that hot dog suit and screaming, "We're all trying to find the guy who did this." This is devastating. I mean, this is kind of in the territory, Raw, where you lose the first game of the season, draw the second, and you're going into the third to save your job territory.
Yeah, and we've been here before with United managers. It happened with Ten Hag. It happened with Louis van Gaal. It happened to an extent with Solskjaer that they kind of had these bad runs, and there's such pressure on United to get back to where they should be that the first hint of a bad run can almost be fatal for a manager. I think Amorim needed this win as a way to say, look, this works. This can work. If he'd finished 16th in the Premier League and won the Europa League, he might have been able to spin it that, you know, they've kind of tossed off the lead. They're not that bothered. They don't care. They've been saving themselves for Europe, and it's worked, which is what Postecoglou gets to do now, right? That's what he can say. Not sure it's true, but it's what he can say. Now Ruben Amorim is in charge of Manchester United, who are just 16th in the Premier League. That's it. And I say this like you. It's a really good point, Rog, that if Amorim wasn't a good-looking, well-dressed, kind of charismatic, charming, young Portuguese man, he's younger than me, would we be giving him, if he was a sort of 50-year-old grizzled Belgian, we probably wouldn't be being nice to him. We'd probably be saying, this guy's really hapless.
He smiled. It's the smiles in that first week. They said, we're like, we've seen him. He was good. He smiled. They want the...
And he had that reputation from Sporting Lisbon, I suppose. You know, he'd won the championship with the smallest of the Portuguese big three. He was the next big thing. But we saw it with Ten Hag. Ten Hag limped over the line at the end of his first season, I think, and it was disappointing. Then he had a bad start to his second, and he never really recovered. So I'm sure that Amorim will see out the summer. I'm sure that United will spend a lot of money. I'm sure that it won't solve all their problems, but I'm equally sure that at some point next season they will hit a bad run of form, and at that point the pressure on Ruben Amorim will become all but unbearable.
Spending more money again to fit the cut of his jib, and then firing him, bringing in a manager who needs different. I mean, that's the United way. That is so crazy. That's how you get an exquisite corpse of a squad. Rob Whittig in the chat. Does this game have the trifecta? Best smile, Ange, best tears, Sonny, best defensive play, in the spirit of a 5-year-old flinging themselves joyously onto a couch. Van de Ven, why yes, it did. Alex from Iowa. I've just told you where you're from. I've ruined that part. It's my favourite. Unmute, baby. Tell us where in Iowa you are and what's your question for Rory.
Hi, Raj. Hi, Rory. Long-time listener, first-time do-it-liver. I am from Ames, Iowa. It's about 30 minutes north of Des Moines.
What's it like in Ames, Alex?
Oh, it's lovely here. It's a college town, home of Iowa State University.
I've got no more questions. I've got many. I was actually going to talk about Iowa and Chuck Long, but you wouldn't have liked that. Iowa State, are they the Cyclones, or am I mucking that up?
Yep, that's correct.
God bless America. I cut you off, baby. Keep going, Alex, from Ames, Iowa, the Cyclones, and tell us what your question is.
No worries at all. So I am a Liverpool fan, and as such, it brings me great joy to see Manchester United fail to win a trophy, even if it means that Tottenham has to win one. My question is, with the Spurs victory, do you think that it would extinguish the fans' desire for Daniel Levy to relinquish ownership of the club, or do you think the protest will continue?
What a question. Real baby.
It's a really good question. I mean, the short and unsatisfying answer is I don't really know. I think a lot of the discontent at Tottenham is quite long-standing and quite deep-rooted. Like, there is a general sense among a lot of the fans that in this model, they can't ever fulfill their potential. Now, that's a bit of a weird bar to hold them to, because I'm not quite sure what Spurs' potential is. Like, Spurs should not be... There's nothing historical to suggest that Spurs should be winning titles every year. That's not Tottenham. They are a modern super club with an amazing stadium, an incredible training ground, like a wage bill that's one of the 10 or 15 highest in world football. Feels like they're kind of where they should be, to be honest. They maybe need to make some better decisions in the transfer market and match the squad up with the manager a bit more. And the other thing about Spurs, and this is really not the sort of thing you can put on a banner, they're a really well-run business. of all the clubs in the Premier League, if you talk to like other executives at other teams, they all think Daniel Levy's great. They think he's like a miracle worker. So I think what will happen definitely is that the protests will not be as vocal and as voluble for 6 months to a year, because the trophy will. That's what trophies do. They kind of make everything better. They're a medicine. After that, I think if they don't build on it, then they will come back, because there's a deep-seated like desire, I think, partly just to get rid of Levy, just for Levy not to be there anymore, because he's become the scapegoat. But also, I think there's a substantial portion of Spurs fans who would quite like to be bought out by something that definitely isn't a nation state, but might have the money of one. I think that those two things won't change with this. But in the short term, I think the Spurs fans will be genuinely happy. And that's what's been great this season about Newcastle, about Palace, about Spurs, is that you have teams winning trophies for whom the trophies themselves mean something. United were in the Europa League to win it so they could get in the Champions League. Spurs wanted to win the Europa League.
I mean, it is beautiful. I mean, it really is. Football ultimately is about emotion. We know that, going into World Cups where there's a sense that, the darkness of Qatar, the darkness of Russia, and then the second the football kicks off, we're just silenced by the beauty, the wonder, the ecstasy, the transcendence. And in the same way, football is a bit bread and circus. Ultimately, the Champions League journey that lies ahead now will be the fixation. Are we bringing in the players of that caliber? Can we? Will we? Will we live up to the Pochettino final team? There's a whole different set of questions that can kind of obliterate that frustration, that agony. The what are we doing here? The what are we doing here question has to some degree been answered, but there is also that double scenario. You've reached the Champions League. If this Spurs team sully themselves in that opening round, utterly crap the bed, and it is just a Heart of Darkness-esque kind of journey, then I think in a heartbeat it will occur again. And a repeat flagellating, flailing Premier League campaign and a very humiliating Champions League campaign. I think the trap will be the Levy out trap will be played, but it will be turned up to 11. So for now, I'd say it's been silence. I think there'll be joy. I think it'll be dancing all over the white half of North London. I think there'll be utter ecstasy. Memories are being made, generational memories. Friend of ours works at Men in Blazers. Scott Debson flew over from New York to meet his dad, took his kid. I imagine they are dancing as they would do at the kid's wedding. It's that generationally wonderful. So tonight, I think that is the feeling of ecstasy, of longing for this, of deserving this. But football there's only two moods. There's like that ecstasy, or there's the old agony, the default setting, and it's very easy to slip between the two. I want to get to these questions. Amorim has just spoken. If the board and the fans think I'm not the right guy, then I'll go in the next day without hesitation. That fits into Rory's philosophy that man is dying to be fired.
He's trying to get out. That he just keeps it. It's a man trying to leave a relationship. It is a man saying, "Look, I'm really unattractive now. Look, I really let myself go.
It's not me. It's come on, break up with me.
On the sofa,
break up with me." There's that chronic person who won't do the breaking up, but acts in a way that I think that's utterly Ruben Amorim.
He's not replying to their texts.
The ultimate ghoster. He is ghosting. Ronnie from. I'm not going to say where you're from because that's your role. Ronnie, unmute. Come and ask you a banger of a question, baby. Do we have Ronnie from Denver? Oh, I've just given away the place again. We do not. This is a tragedy. Ronnie's question was, wants to know if the journey is overrated, which I just love philosophically, Ro. It is utterly, utterly beautiful.
In most cases, the journey is not overrated. In most cases, the journey is the fun, because in sport, the journey is the bit that lasts the longest. And like the destination, the moment of ascendance is wonderful. And when your team, as Spurs fans will be feeling tonight, when your team does it, it is something truly, truly special. But that doesn't mean the journey, if it ends in the wrong place, doesn't mean the journey's not worthwhile. Spurs will have had lots of moments over the course of this season that they have every right to cherish. Just as United, that's maybe the best example. Manchester United fans will always remember the win against Lyon at Old Trafford, those mad 3 minutes that got them through, despite the fact that they haven't won tonight. In time, they will forget that game was on the road to a final that they lost. In the same way as, to give a Liverpool example, Liverpool had an incredible comeback under Jurgen Klopp against Borussia Dortmund, which went down as kind of the first great, Klopp Anfield night. And then a month later, they lost the Europa League final to Sevilla. And no one remembers. It doesn't impact the memory of that win against Dortmund because the journey does matter.
I have nothing to add to that. It is the greatest. For me, the journey is, as an Everton fan, is utterly the everything. But tonight we did see a destination. I will say I'm shocked by the amount of empathy that I feel for Spurs. I am genuine. It's not as if my own team won, but I feel a disturbance in the force in the greatest possible way, and I'm so happy for all of you. We'll take one more. It's the great Glenn Smith. Come on up. Tell us where you're from and what's your question.
Hey, Rog. Hey, Rory. Coming from St. Louis, Missouri. How refreshing is it to see a coach say a bold statement, a bold fact of I never like at a club I coach, it takes me 2 years and there's always a trophy. That man, Big Ange, you beautiful, beautiful man, you. Thank you for following through. I'm not a Tottenham Hotspur fan by any stretch of the imagination, but love your bravado. Thank you for following through.
Glenn Smith, that is a beautiful way to end this tonight. I think you focused in on the right note. I say we just made a film about Bournemouth and their plans to continue to try and punch above their weight. And the gentleman who's at the heart of it, I actually have his bobblehead on my desk because I admire him greatly, Bill Foley. I've just broken his bobblehead. His arm's just fallen off this second. I just shattered his little shit. There you are, and that's how Bournemouth didn't make Europe, because I broke my Bill Foley. So this documentary we've just come out with, I think it's coming out tomorrow. Bill Foley famously came into Bournemouth. They were above the relegation zone, and then he said, "We're not going to get relegated." And I asked him, I was like, he told the media that, and I was like, you're a man of data. You're a man of analysis. What did you see in the data that made you completely sure that your team weren't going to get relegated? And he was like, I didn't see anything. I was just really annoyed. There's Irish in me. And sometimes when I get really angry, the Irish comes out and I just say things. Raw. Either way, it came true for him. And his vow to get, the Golden Knights to win the Stanley Cup in, was it 6 years? He did it in like 2 or 3. I do believe he'll get Bournemouth into Europe. But he says these things, but I'm not sure he actually means them. He just gets annoyed at the media, shouts them out, and God bless, there they are. And he's speaking truth. It's not always sure to me he believes them, Raw. For you, an Ange, doomed Ange, Anguish Postecoglou, being tortured. Times in these interviews, Raw, this season, I think when I watch him be interviewed, I feel like I'm watching Joan of Arc on the on the pyre burning. I see a man suffering, a good man, an empathetic man, a man who feels things suffer. And when he said that, you laughed at it earlier. Did he mean it? I can't imagine he believed it. I can't imagine there was anything around him that made him think, did he look at the play of Romero and be like, that gives me confidence? Did he look at Tels, who came in from Bayern Munich, and watch him disappear that and go, that gives me confidence? There was nothing. Did he look at Daniel Levy and the backing he did or didn't get and go, that gives me confidence? I think ultimately it was like the lashing out of a desperate man. And tonight, that dream, that last tiny, not unlike in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. How did Grandpa get that golden ticket? It was a 1 in a million moonshot, Raw, and I think there's even more hope in it because of that. Did he mean it, Raw? Did he mean it when he said it?
I don't think he did, if I'm honest. I think he was getting a bit kind of riled and annoyed that people were querying his methods. His methods, which, to play devil's advocate, he completely abandoned to win the Europa League. This was not an Ange Postecoglou kind of, we're not going to change the way we play, mate. It was very much, we've completely changed the way we play, mate. We're sitting deep and defending. I think he got really annoyed. And he must, in his head, all managers are, to some extent, like maniacs. He must, in his head, have that knowledge that generally in his second season he's always won something. I think that is basically true. I'm not quite sure if it's completely eternally true, but he's obviously got this sort of sense that he wins stuff in his second year, and I think he kind of said it. And to be honest, for quite a long time, it looked like it was a ridiculous thing to say because they got knocked out of the League Cup, they got knocked out of the FA Cup. And before the Eintracht Frankfurt quarter-final, he kind of looked at them and thought, well, this team are terrible. They cannot possibly win the Europa League. But they've gone and done it. So maybe the lesson here isn't, it doesn't matter if he believed it or if he said it out of anger or in the moment or spite or whatever. If you say stuff, if you manifest, Rog, things come true. We are in charge of the universe, or maybe Ange Postecoglou's in charge of the universe.
Oh my God, I'd love to live in that world, Raw. I really, really would. I think tonight we saw he who laughs last destroy Spursiness, and the world is a better place. But the world's a better place for this conversation tonight. I'm so bloody grateful to all of you. We've had so many incredible letters, by the way, from GFOPs over the past week since the last podcast. I can't read it now because it's quite long, but it is incredible. From a GFOP, Carl B. Sell, Associate Director for McNair and Undergraduate Research Programs at the University of Pittsburgh, a massive yinzer who gave me an etymological breakdown, Raw, of bite your arm off, which is, generally it's a thesis on the subject. And we asked, he answered. Keep writing to us at meninplaces@gmail.com. A reminder, our documentary on Bournemouth and their plans to continue to punch above their weight, even with a broken Bill Foley bobblehead. Please God, they'll one day qualify for Europe. We spent months making this beauty. Can't wait for you to see it. Drops on our YouTube tomorrow morning. Smash that subscribe right now. Turn your notifications on. You get an alert when it goes live. I'll also sort you out for the Kevin De Bruyne interview, which will premiere right here on YouTube Saturday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Next week, Ryan Reynolds. A week on Thursday. So much happening. And God bless you all for joining us here tonight to see Spurs' finest hour. Most of all, you, Raw, you chocolate orange connoisseur. Thank you, Crown Prince of Harrogate.
I'll see you next year for what? Crystal Palace against Aston Villa?
I think it'd be Wrexham against Wycombe Wanderers in the Birmingham in the finals. It is no one. Till next time, let's not take a second of watching football together for granted. This is Rod saying big love and courage.